Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Mzansi Welcomes the World. This is your G20 preview show. Yes, we are 5 days before that very leaders summit that will be happening in Nasrec. My name is Faraz Patel. I would like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. Economic growth, sustainability, investment. Those are the three priority areas that South Africa will be looking at to try and showcase to the world, but also within the country itself. Can this be the driving force for economic growth and investment to help South Africa go ahead and achieve the 3% GDP growth that it's looking for, and of course curbing the high unemployment rate? Joining me now to take this discussion forward, I'd like to welcome the Chief Executive Officer of Business Leadership South Africa, Busi Mavuso. Busi, always good to speak to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for the invitation, Faraz. Looking forward to the conversation.
No, it's an absolute pleasure always having you on, Busi. Busi, of course, this comes at a time where the country is going through an economic strain and opportunity. From a business perspective, how important is this G20 presidency of South Africa?
So it's quite important and it's quite crucial for us as a country. Remember, it is the first time that an African nation has hosted the G20 and the P20. So it has been a significant moment for us. And we are the only country in the continent that is a member of the G20. So this for us is not just a South African P20, but it's also an African P20. And over this year, we've had an opportunity to lead and preside over conversations that are going to shape the world's economy. And the posture that we have assumed as South Africa during this presidency has been to first and foremost highlight the investment opportunities that exist in the country in the hope of attracting foreign direct investment. We have used the presidency to amplify the vision and priorities of the current 7th administration. We have used this platform to extend the optimism that has been signaled by the financial markets on South Africa since the Government of National Unity has come into office in June 2024. We have used this platform to showcase our country as an investment destination. We have used it to showcase our investment readiness for us. We have used this as an opportunity to launch our re-emergence as a country, our re-emergence as a force to be reckoned with amongst our peers, not just in the continent, but among the emerging and developing economies cluster. We have used it as an opportunity to establish in the minds of the world that South Africa is a jurisdiction that matters, that South Africa is a market that has a lot to offer, and that South Africa is a country that is heading in the right direction.
Busi, how does, from a BLSA perspective, envision South Africa leveraging from this? So it's a good thing to say, well, we've got the presidency, a lovely title, a lovely status to have. But surely there has to be something more that comes to this. And South Africa has this role within the global economic stage. This week, actually the next few days are going to be important with B20. So from a BLSA perspective, how does South Africa leverage this?
So the good thing is that all the great work that we've done as a country has been independently affirmed by international bodies. So this is not just the case of South Africa blowing their own horn and dancing to their own music. We have had international bodies actually give us verdicts in terms of how well we have done as a country in our efforts to improve global competitiveness and to actually change our investment narrative. So last week, Friday, S&P credit rating agency upgraded South Africa's credit rating, which provides an independent verdict on the progress that we have made as a country to improve our global competitiveness and investment narrative. In their announcement for us, they noted that South Africa's improving growth and fiscal trajectory have been key. They highlighted the reduction of the risks related to Eskom being our state-owned electricity utility. They noted the reform momentum, the reform momentum that has actually picked up. They highlighted how the reform unit in the presidency, Operation Vulindlela, has done a great job, in the reforms around the electricity sector. They've noted the progress we have made in relation to Transnet being our state-owned, freight and transport logistics company, the progress that have made in concessioning rail capacity. And they've also highlighted, how well the government of national unity has actually done well for the country. So it has actually been quite interesting, to get that verdict. But they've also highlighted the continued strength of our sophisticated financial system, the strong independent institutions like the South African Reserve Bank, the positive support that the government of national unity has shown to the growth enhancing reforms. So the credit rating upgrade really says we are a government that is starting to regain control of the nation's finances. It says we are turning the corner towards attaining a sustainable economic trajectory. It says that there are growth supporting fiscal interventions in place. It says that we continue to show fiscal discipline as a country. And that is actually very positive, to have that international institution highlight that about South Africa. But you'd also remember, Faraz, that we have just been exited from FATF. We've been graded as a country, exactly. So that is also positive, because that is also an independent assessment, because removing South Africa from FATF means that there is recognition of the work that we have done to strengthen our anti-money laundering and our counter-terrorism financing frameworks. And we now have a financial system that is appropriately vigilant about abuse. So I think it has really been positive, and I think that will definitely improve our competitiveness as a country.
Busi, I remember speaking to you last year, and that's when the GNU government was formed. Energy, I think we were close to it being solved. We just heard yesterday from Eskom that it seems to be on the right track. Logistics, there's a plan when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Policy, well, not really uncertainty. We're kind of close to actually finding a unified policy within the GNU. It's just crime that probably sticks out as some of the challenges or the structural constraints that we have within the country right now. How important is this G20 presidency of South Africa vital to say, well, we can solve that one underlying issue? Of course, the Madlanga Commission is currently going on. We have the ad hoc committee for police that is happening within Parliament. But how close or how far are we to addressing these real constraints within the country which will allow there to be this investment and economic growth?
So if you look at the verdicts, and I think the outcomes of S&P credit rating, the outcome of FATF, that precisely signals the progress that we have made as a country. So we've definitely turned the corner in as far as those structural constraints are concerned, and the government of national unity has been quite instrumental in that regard. And I really think if you look at the progress that we've made as a country, we come from having 283 days of load shedding in 2023 to only 13 days of load shedding, equaling only 26 hours in 2025. Now, that is real progress in as far as energy security is concerned. We have added about 14,000 megawatts that have been registered on NESA, our South African energy regulator, since the lifting of the threshold for embedded generation. You would have heard, for us, the Minister of Transport, I think it must have been 2 months ago now, announcing the 11 new training operating companies across 41 routes. That is important. We're going to have private trains running on our tracks. We know that the work visa backlog has been eradicated by the Department of Home Affairs. We have seen the regulation of the PPP framework amended to make it easy to do PPP projects in this country. Municipal reform is underway by Operation Vulindlela. We have also re-established the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, which is an elite independent law enforcement agency within the National Prosecuting Authority, which is going to be responsible for organized crime, high-level corruption, racketeering, complex financial crimes, drug trafficking, and so forth. And when you talk about what's happening at the Madlanga Commission at the moment, we really need the re-establishment. So this is like re-establishing the scorpions for us. You and I remember a few years ago, we had the scorpions in the country, which were shut down down by the Zuma government because they obviously wanted to embark, on this trajectory of corruption, looting, and this is where it has actually landed up the country. So when you listen to how the criminal justice system in this country has actually been compromised, you see the importance of the reestablishment of that unit. So we really are on a path of intentionally reversing the monopolistic market structures and reducing government dominance through reforms. And we are putting systems in place that are going to ensure that the country should be able to function and not be constrained by the political turbulence and volatility that we've actually seen over the past few years.
My conversation with Busi Mavuso continues after the break. And of course, we're going to be touching on the private-public partnership. Has it improved over the years? And does the G20 presidency of South Africa allow for it to have full improvement or a full circle in terms of that? Mzansi welcomes the ball, continues after the break. Welcome back. I'm sitting in conversation with Busi Mavuso, the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. Again, thank you so much for staying with us, Busi. Busi, private-public partnership, and I know, of course, BLSA plays quite a huge role with regards to that. This B20 summit that's going to obviously be happening in the next 2 to 3 days, how important is it, number one, in establishing this sort of a relationship or improving this relationship, number one, and number two, within the B20 summit, the importance with regards to this?
So we have done a great job as business and government in this country to achieve the reforms that I've actually just highlighted earlier on. We have worked together to address the serious issues facing our economy, and we have seen an emergence of a pro-business ideological shift. So there definitely has been an improvement in the relationship. The trust deficit that actually existed before has definitely been reduced. And I really think that it's a pleasure, to see that improvement in the relationship, because business needs government as much as government needs us. And I must say that President Cyril Ramaphosa has been a great proponent and sponsor of the reform agenda, which has just made the relationship between business and government much more easier. But business has also been a willing partner, to government in supporting to deliver a conducive environment for the economy to grow. And there has been this alignment between the B20 and the G20 to ensure, that we keep each other appraised of some of the conversations and the work that is actually coming out from the different task forces that have actually been engaging. So our government is not going to be seeing the policy recommendations that are coming from the P20 for the first time. There's been that constant engagement, and there's been that alignment between both. So it has been a good working relationship, and I think it has also been improved for us by the Government of National Unity. You really have ministers in this Government of National Unity who get it. Ministers who understand that business is a partner to co-create solutions with. Ministers who don't assume an adversarial posture to business. And I think it has just been pleasant, working with a whole lot of these new government ministers under the Government of National Unity.
Busi, investment.
Yes.
This is the big question. And South Africa's G20 presidency is going to be really the one that puts into question how much more investment can be driven into this country. Where are we in terms of that? Because obviously politics plays a huge role with regards to that. And I'm going to touch on the United States question in a bit, because the relations between Washington and Pretoria have not been good. And it's sort of cast a negative dispersion of South Africa at this moment. But is there still appetite from international investors within this country?
There definitely is, although let's agree and let's accept for us that it has reduced, and I think we have made a lot of noises as the business community in this country and have been very unambiguous in our message, to say we need a conducive trading environment. We need to cut red tape. We need to fix the bottlenecks, and once you do that, business will respond. And we are clearly seeing this, as as a country with the improvements that have been made to rail and ports, with the improvements that have been made to energy security, with opening up industries that used to be government monopolies into private sector participation. And I really think that that is important. And I really think when you look at South Africa, in that broader African context, we still are strategic. For us, we're the biggest economy, we're the strongest, we're the most resilient. We've got deep and liquid capital markets. You get better integration into the global economy through South Africa. We've got the best infrastructure in the continent. We are the most diversified. We are the most technologically advanced. So we just needed to get our house in order and fix some of these issues, that have been allowed to deteriorate over time, due to the Zuma administration. So there definitely is improvement. We are doing the work. The international community and international agencies have actually given us a green light, and they've given us that independent verdict. And I do believe that economic growth and investment will definitely come, because that is always a lag indicator.
Busi, I want to touch on the United States. Obviously, its government or its higher representatives are not coming. Who knows? Anything can happen in the next few days. You may even get Donald Trump saying, I may want to come, but it just doesn't look like it's going to happen. From a business perspective, I had David Fawkes from the South African Reserve Bank 2 weeks ago, and he said there is still appetite from United States investors, the business community, to still want to invest within South Africa, despite the noise that is coming out of the Trump administration. It's a twofold question to you, Busi. Number one, is there a disappointment that the United States government, the Trump administration, is not coming? And two, if so, from the communique or the talks that you've been having with your colleagues within the United States, how do they still see South Africa as an investment destination?
So our engagements from a B20 perspective in all the 8 different task forces has not been impacted. We have seen our US counterparts, fully participating. The recommendations that are going to be coming out of the B20 that have already been handed over to the G20 have been, with the US participating in those conversations and supporting those recommendations. You are having a huge delegation of the American business leaders who are actually going to land in South Africa to attend the B20 summit. I'm actually attending one conversation tomorrow for us, where the US counterparts want to talk about deepening the US partnerships, with Africa. So you can see that the posture that they're assuming is actually a different one, and I think it's always the case. Business, in a country might have a different posture and outlook, and government, and it's the case for South Africa as well, right? There are a lot of things that we disagree on, when it comes to our own South African government as well, where they see things in a particular way, and we actually view them in a particular way. But the G20 is going to continue with or without, the US. There are going to be a few delegates from the American government. I don't know at which level. So we are going to be handing over to the US, when the G20 finishes, I think on Sunday at Nasrec. And they are going to be taking over the G20 hosting of the presidency next year. And I think they will do what they wish to do with it. But again, remember, this is not about the US. US is one of the 20 countries, because there's 21, there's 19 countries and 2 unions, African Union and the European Union. So they don't have a voice that is bigger than the rest of us. So the fact that they'll be hosting next year as well doesn't mean that they actually get to choose and decide what happens in the G20. It's still a multilateral platform. There's 20 other countries and 20 other presidents which have, an opportunity to actually shape that agenda. So this continues as normal.
Busi, one final question. The 2 great key factors of economic growth are, of course, GDP and the unemployment rate. So obviously last week, Stats South Africa gave a reading on the unemployment rate, and it was slightly positive. We're still, as a country, trying to reach the 3% GDP growth. How much, or the recommendations from BLSA, what are the policy proposals that BLSA is looking for, which will drive this economic growth for South Africa and ultimately also the global economic growth?
So I think what has also been encouraging for me, Faraz, to witness the conversations within the B20, as much as you said with 21 countries, as much as you said with more than 300 participants in each and every task force from all the 21 countries, we were very focused, or everyone was very focused on driving a African-centric agenda, on driving a developing and emerging economies-centric agenda. And that was actually very interesting to see and witness. And the two, I think, policy recommendations that are actually quite exciting for me is one from the Finance and Infrastructure Task Force, which talks about the need to make a contribution to the reduction of the cost of capital for the continent, which talks to making a case for multilateral agencies to change their mandates to make it easy for Africa to access their funding, because we know that there is normally a bias when it comes to the credit rating agencies. And I think when you give aid and debt to Africa, there's normally that bias. And I think that risk premium that makes it easy, or that makes it difficult, for the debt to come at a cheaper rate, as it were. So the G20 and the entire global economy is actually saying we need to take a look at that, and that will definitely benefit us. Number two is the recommendation from the Trade and Investment Task Force, which talks to the acceleration of the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area.
Yes.
And looking at how we support the full and fast implementation of this so that we can unlock the $3.4 trillion market. And once this is unlocked, South Africa is going to be the biggest beneficiary, because as things stand, South Africa accounts for 70% of the intra-African trade. Being the strongest economy means that we get to benefit the most from the African Continental Free Trade Area. So having the entire global economy saying we need to take our energy, time, and focus to help the Africa continent to actually establish the African Continental Free Trade Area is exciting for me, and it will definitely augur well, not just for South Africa, but for the broader continent.
Busi Mavuso, always good having you on. Thank you so much for joining us here on Mzansi Welcomes the World. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Faraz. Thanks for the conversation.
That's Busi Mavuso, Business Leadership South Africa CEO. Well, after the break, we're going to be shifting the focus to the Civil 20 or the C20, the role of civil society within South Africa. And will they have a larger voice now since they've had this working group within South Africa's G20 presidency? I'll be speaking to Thulani Chefota after the break.